Hey folks, Kirk Vogel here, and thanks for tuning in. Today is the start of our Lightroom tutorials, and we're going to kick it off with the histogram tool. So let's jump right on in. I've chosen this image here of my lovely wife and dog because you can see we've got a lot of whites and we've got a lot of blacks. So we've lost some black detail through here. We've lost a tiny bit of white detail in this ear on the left. Lost a lot of detail in the shadows and the blacks through the glasses and the hair, but because this is a raw file, most of this information is actually in there and will come back to us, as long as we know how to do that. That's where this little box up here comes in. Now this is the histogram box, and you'll see if we just hover over the histogram, it's broken into about 5 pieces. You've got whites at the extreme right end, then you've got highlights, then you've got Adobe calls this exposure. I prefer to think of it as midtones. Then we've got shadows and we've got our blacks. So there's 5 distinctly different sections of the histogram. You'll also notice that in these top corners, we've got little triangles. We've got a little triangle on the white side and a little triangle on the black side. You can click these on to be on full time. And if you're going to do that, you'll see where the actual photograph is clipping the detail in the blacks or the whites. We don't look like we're clipping any detail in the whites, because if you look at the white end of the histogram, we've got a little bit of a space between where the data ends and the very edge of the histogram. But we haven't got that on the left hand side, so you can see we've got these blue indications that we're losing detail in the blacks and the shadows. The good thing about this is if you hover over the black part, you can actually slide, we'll do it in an extreme version, we can slide our data to the right, in which case you'll see all our blue bits go away. Now let's click off those, and if you looked at the image, you'd still say it's missing a little bit of white data there. So perhaps we might want to slide our white data down a bit, and you can see as we do that, we actually get detail in the whites in certain areas. You see that? You might also notice, if we go down to our tone box, our blacks and white sliders here have moved. Now, I'm a fan of this next technique. I'm not sure if you are too, but I'm a fan of this one. The option, or might be control on a Mac. Option on the Mac, command, control, whatever it is. I've got no idea. I'm not a PC user. Sorry. Hold down the option button and just move your sliders. In this case, we're moving the white slider. You can see it's black, but as we move it right, we get a whole pile of this white stuff come into the image. Just while we're holding down the option and just sliding these across. Now, if I click off now, you're going to see extremely blown out whites. And why is that? Because if you look up at our histogram, our entire histogram's moved white past that edge. So let's just hold down option again and slide that back. We actually want the ideal point is at where all of those details disappear. So that says now we've got all our detail in all of our whites, and if you look up to the histogram box, you see that all of the white detail falls inside the edges of the histogram. In this case, it's saying we're about minus 10. Minus 10. From the edge of the histogram. In the blacks, we're about the same. We don't have any clipped areas, so if we go down to the black slider, let's just reset that. Hold down our option key and just move that around. You'll see, wow, now you'll see a ton of black information pop up on the screen. What that tells us is that disappears at that point, but back here, if we click off our option key, all that blacks all our shadow detail will be lost. So you can see there, if we bring that back to 0, you'll see the black detail starting to come in, but we still don't know exactly where our ideal point is. So hold down the option key, slide across, and you'll see, same again with the whites, get to the point at which all those pixels just disappear. And you've basically got a point now with your blacks, and you can double check that by looking at the histogram box. Everything's falling inside the parameters of the histogram ends. So the next thing we want to do is we want to adjust our shadows and our highlights, which just so happen to be the next two sliders up. Now this is where a lot of people who like the HDR look might go a little bit overboard. They might go, oh yikes, we're going to bring up the shadows and we're going to bring down, and you've got detail all over the image, and look what it's done to the histogram. You've basically traded tone for visual pleasure, pleasability, whatever you want to call it. I'm not a fan of that at all. It doesn't look natural, and it can be much better. But you can see we do have a bit of darkness, not seeing a lot of detail in Doggy's face or my wife's glasses. So let's just move the shadow detail up a little bit more till it's a bit more natural. There we go. Highlight detail. Well, we know we've got all our detail in the whites because we can see that on our histogram. This is the white end. It's not clipping past the edge of the histogram. The same as the blacks are falling inside the edge, which means we know we've got all the data available on the file. I might just turn that down a little bit. And what we have now is a file that has no clipped blacks, no clipped whites, and a really good chunky mid-range for mid-tones. That might be, that might be what you want. It might be the start of your editing process. For me, this would formulate the start of an editing process, but for the sake of this, we'll probably stop here just so you're not too overwhelmed, because there's a lot more tools down here you can play with to enhance your creativity. But don't worry about that for now, because we're going to eat this elephant in tiny little bites. For now, I just want you really to understand how this histogram box here relates to your tone box down here and what that actually does to your image. And that, if we go full frame, that would probably be just about right for me to start with. This would be a really good base to start with if you really wanted to refine your edit. It's also not a bad place to stop, because if you were going to send this out to be printed, you know for a fact that when this file goes through a printing machine, all the detail, all the data that has been saved in this file includes all of the black data and all of the white data. So you've got basically all the data that your camera could have recorded has been recorded and refined and improved. So you can rest assured, if you sent this file to a printer now, it's going to come back looking pretty good. But we're going to stop here for now, because there is a lot more stuff to learn, and I don't want to overwhelm you too much. But take some of your existing files, put them through Lightroom, have a little play around with these boxes. Now you understand where your blacks, shadows, midtones, highlights and whites are, and how they relate to this area here, and effectively how not to clip out details. You're going to find that your pictures are going to improve quite dramatically. So that's the histogram tool. I do hope you learned something. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.